This is a Raspberry Pi. And this is a Raspberry Pi. Okay, well, it's cherry, but it's the only thing I could find at the local gas station near my house. Okay, we're a little low budget. Just use your imagination. Okay. I'm going to talk about this Raspberry Pi in just a minute. I'm going to eat this Raspberry Pi in just a minute. Oh, man. 5-second rule. Hi, welcome to Can a Spader Christmas. So this is a follow-up episode to the previous Raspberry Pi SATA episode that I did about connecting a solid-state hard drive up to the Pi. Now, I did get a few comments on the last video. Chuck had commented with 128 gigabyte SD cards under $20 is putting an SSD on a Pi necessary. No, you don't need it for Falcon Player. If you have an application that does a lot of writes, such as really any database application. I also did one on using the temperature sensors, the one-wire temperature sensors. That would definitely need, it'd go through a SD card pretty quickly. So the size wasn't the problem. It's the number of writes available on an SD card. And so that was the whole reason behind that episode. Now, as far as this little interface is concerned, it does come with an adapter for power, and I didn't know exactly what that was for. I thought it was difference in USB, and it wasn't. Mihu from the UK commented, isn't the additional power socket for 12 volt for 3.5-inch drives? And the answer is yes. So if you have a full-size hard drive and you want to use it with this, you will also need to use the adapter because this takes 12 volts to run. And finally, Angelo pointed me to this little gem here. So if you want to kick it up a notch, I'll go through this in more detail. So this card is what I'm talking about. Here's a Raspberry Pi and here's a 2.5-inch drive. But this card is the X820 V3 2.5-inch SATA storage board from Geekworm, and they are out of Shenzhen, China. Now this is available. I bought this board from Amazon, and I'll put a link to it below. This is not a sponsored video. I bought the board on my own. Geekworm did not, send me anything or ask me to review it. But, after seeing this, they might come a-calling. Now, they also make an X720 UPS hat that takes two 18650s, and it acts like a UPS for the Pi, which many of you might actually be interested in. So I'll see if I can get that. And it just hooks on the top of there, and then you have a couple of these batteries, and it just sits in there like that. I know you can't really see that, but anyway, that might be something that a lot of you are interested in actually. Geekworm sells a complete package on their website that is about double what I paid for just this board. But it includes a couple of other things. Now, one very important piece is a 4-amp 5-volt power supply. And the other part is a metal enclosure for the whole thing, with a big old power button on it. Well, it looks that way in the picture. It might really only be about this big, but I don't know. They can also build you a custom case, a custom enclosure, if you provide them with design specifications. Now, they call this a hat, and it's really more like a pair of trousers. I mean, it's on the bottom, okay? Hats go on top, trousers go on bottom. Is Pi slacks a thing? Okay, let's go over assembly. There are some steps that you need to follow in order. Trust me on that. I had to take this apart like 2 or 3 times because I did not follow the instructions. And then once I saw the instructions, I was like, oh, yeah, it makes sense. You will need a small Phillips screwdriver to put this together. Now, I have one that I used in my PC repair days and, you know, years ago, and that worked just fine. There may be a piece of yellow film covering the hard drive holes that you will need to remove. Mine didn't have those, so I didn't need to follow that step. The kit comes with M2.5 screws, or 2.5 millimeter, that go into 12 millimeter spacers, and M3 screws that go into 15 millimeter spacers. Now, you may need a magnifying glass to tell the difference, and that's generally for the older viewers. You young whippersnappers can probably still tell the difference without one. Now, the instructions tell you to install the 12 millimeter standoffs pointing up and then install the hard drive next. Again, I didn't read the instructions the first time through and had to take this apart 3 times, so don't do what I did. It is okay to go ahead and install all of the standoffs before the hard drive though. Longer ones go on the bottom. You might want to put some thread lock on the screws holding the standoffs. I didn't have any, so I didn't do it, but I might have done it if I had some. Get a couple of M3 screws started into the threaded holes for the hard drive and then install the hard drive. Now, I'm using a 320 gigabyte mechanical hard drive, but a solid state drive is supported as well. I will advise you to get both screws started into the drive before tightening them all the way down. The tolerances are a little tight here. Use 4 of the M2.5 screws to install the Raspberry Pi and insert the little USB coupler. Now install the 2-pin power cable between the board and the Pi. If you're looking at the Pi straight on with the Ethernet and USB ports facing your feet, the right side of the GPIO pins is where you want to attach this. Now, the top 2 pins, pins 2 and 4, are both 5 volts, and pin 6 is ground. So skip the top pin and make sure you are connecting this to the right set of pins. Now, if you are unsure about this, you can use the white power cable between the USB output on the board and the Pi's micro USB power connector. That came in the kit. Don't use both. Now, I did not get the power supply with this, so I have a 60 amp 5 volt power supply, and I have created a little connector for this board. Let's fire this up and see if it works. If I log into the command line and do an ls block or lsblk, I can see the hard drive just like last time, so we're good to go. One thing to note, so this was the little connector that I built and I plugged it in right here. The only problem with going directly to the 5 volt rail is this switch doesn't work anymore. So now I have purchased one of these cables. I will link those below. It does plug into the 5 volt input here, and watch this. The little switch works now. Okay, so this seems to be a very nice little kit. I'm very happy with it, so something that I can recommend. So if you want to attach a hard drive to your Pi for whatever reason, this is another good option if that's what you're looking for. I hope you found some of this information useful. As always, if you have any questions, leave them below. Other than that, thanks for watching, and I'll see you again soon.
Now I shot an email.
Game. So I got 6 of these. And so I got 5